Mercedes are actively chasing performance on the W15, and one key area has been revealed during the Melbourne GP that is very likely to help them in Suzuka as well. Although the team ended with a double DNF finish in Melbourne and are going to race on a circuit that does not fit the style of the W15 due to the high-speed corner nature of it, the temperatures might play a huge role in how the W15 acts. And with this in mind, what is the discovery that Allison found on the 2024 Challenger? And more importantly, can they utilise it to improve the performance of the car? Mercedes have struggled a lot with performance in the past couple of races, and that goes without saying. But even though they're pushing to find more performance out of the new design, the Brackley-based squad needs to understand why these issues happen in the first place. And one very important detail has been revealed by James Allison after the Melbourne GP, which is supposed to help the Brackley-based squad a lot during the upcoming race in Japan because of the cooler temperatures that the drivers will race on. When talking about the certain pattern that Allison has noted on the W15, he went on to say that when the track was colder, or more importantly, when the air temperatures were cooler, the W15's performance came to light. This happened because of the tyre degradation becoming lower, or maybe you'd like to put it this way, Mercedes found out that once the track temperatures got higher and there was more rubber and heat laid on it from other cars, their tyre degradation increased, which is subsequently an airflow issue that doesn't allow the car to take care of the tyres. Instead, it eats them up in a faster manner. And now, due to the cooler temperatures in Japan, Mercedes is hoping that the high-speed corners of the Suzuka circuit won't be that much of a big deal and can somehow be compensated by this. Elaborating on this matter, Allison went on to say there were no setup changes between FP3 and qualifying in Melbourne. We take fuel, of course, we turn the engine up to 11, all those things, but there was no significant difference in setup because we felt we got the car in a decent window in FP3 and that was reflected in the timesheets. But we are starting to see a pattern emerge that most weekends we have a period where we feel good about the car, confident about the car, but then in the paying sessions, in the qualifying and the race, that slips through our fingers. If we were trying to draw that pattern together, then probably the strongest correlation that we can make at the moment is that our competitiveness drops when the track is warm, when the day is at its warmest, and therefore the tyre temperatures rise with those of the track. The times when we've been at our best have all been in the sessions that are the coolest, and so that gives us some clues about what we need to do as we move forward from here. This is a really huge discovery, even though people tend to see it with a bit of a tragi-comedy style due to the fact that Mercedes are threatened to miss the concept for the third consecutive year in a row. All of this does look like excuses to be made, especially if you add the fact that Mercedes also have issues with the data correlation from the wind tunnel and on the track. Although there are not many teams that are struggling with this latter issue, more precisely, no other team has reported it the way Mercedes did, Allison is firm that this is a common problem among all the teams due to the fact that the factories are not able to translate everything you need to know about the track. To add even more to this, even if there is a sunny day during the Suzuka race, Mercedes will likely benefit from the fact that the track temperatures will not go extremely high due to the fact that the air temperature will go somewhere between 16 and 18 degrees Celsius. For comparison, the air temperature in Melbourne reached 29 degrees Celsius, and if there is one thing you can say about Suzuka, it's that it always brings the unpredictable factor of rain. As of now, there are expectations that rain will be involved all the way from FP3 to the main event in the race, and it would effectively slow down the performance of the cars, which are circumstances under which Mercedes could thrive if they're smart enough to take the opportunity presented right in front of their eyes. But be that as it may, there is an interesting pattern that this temperature increase is showing to Mercedes. It's not affecting both drivers equally. So it could very well mean that when George Russell was talking about the different preferences between him and Hamilton, he could have had a better approach all the way along. Even now, when Hamilton said that he's not feeling well with the car and there are so many issues to be fixed with the fluctuations of the W15, Russell said the exact opposite. As the Brit added, "I'm definitely not having the fluctuations in confidence or performance on my side of the garage or in my car compared to what Lewis is experiencing. I am reasonably happy with how the car is handling. We just do not quite have the performance." Yep, this could very well be the truth. Mercedes is already starting to prioritise Russell, but they would have to be extremely careful here because he is now known as the better driver of worse cars among the F1 experts. And it's usually not a good sign when he starts to perform better than Hamilton. The 7-time world champion is now likely not going to be bothered about improving the performance of the car, which is to be expected given the fact that he's not going to be present here from 2025 onwards, and therefore he will be putting all of his attention to the upcoming project with Mercedes. However, it doesn't mean that Mercedes will just give up on the W15 randomly. Quite the contrary, Allison said that it's still not clear whether the shortcomings of the car can be remedied with setup work or whether more changes to the car will be required. If the latter one turns out to be the reality for Mercedes, then ultimately they will be playing in the midfield with Aston Martin and occasionally McLaren. Considering the fact that Ferrari's upgrades in Suzuka and Imola are poised to close the gap to Red Bull even further. Adding to this, and whether or not the W15 is a fixable machinery, Allison continued, "If you have identified correctly an accurate assessment of why our competitiveness waxes and wanes, then you can work into the weekend in a program that is dedicated towards trying to move the temperature and the temperature balance to rear in your favour and using all the conventional setup tools on the car. But if you conclude, having exhausted the degrees of freedom that you have available to you in setup terms, that you still need to go further, well, then that gets harder at that point. That will be that there are underlying characteristics in the aerodynamic map that you have engineered, or the suspension characteristic that is aggravating that particular feature. In order to make it really heal up nicely, you would have to change those underlying features. It can be either quick and dirty or a little bit more involved and a bit more complicated. Now, there is a huge challenge laying in front of Mercedes to fix this issue because, as we all know, one of the most bizarre issues that the team has reported on is the lack of correlation between the data they're receiving from the wind tunnel and the one on the track. This could effectively be a game-changer narrative for Mercedes, but in a negative tone, because even if they were to focus on the temperature issue in the wind tunnel, they are not sure whether the tyre issues they're experiencing would correlate with the ones on the track, especially if the weather varies. It's up to us to wait and see whether the rain will play a huge role in how the grid turns out, but one thing is for sure, Mercedes won't have to endure the heat and the tyre wear that the team feels have ruined the previous 3 races. With all this in mind, do you think that Mercedes has what it takes to turn their fortunes around in Suzuka? And more importantly, do you think that it would be Russell who will lead the path in front of Hamilton, who is slowly but surely already focusing on the next chapter of his career? And that, of course, is the Ferrari page. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.